What if the hardest battle isn't against the enemy in front of you, but the choice that could erase entire realities? Some heroes are born from tragedy, others are forged in fire. But the greatest test comes when you hold the power to rewrite history itself. When saving billions means potentially destroying billions more. When the line between hero and God becomes dangerously thin. Tonight, Wonder Woman faces a sister from a timeline that should never have existed. An army of warriors displaced between realities, and a cosmic threat that could unravel existence in 14 days. The easy answer waits in an ancient artifact. The hard answer demands faith in something more powerful than any weapon: trust. This is the story of Supergirl and Wonder Woman, of impossible choices and the courage to find a third option, of learning that true strength isn't about fighting alone. This is the weight of divinity. The weight of divinity. The Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly beneath me, a vast canvas of deep blue catching the last rays of sunset. I hovered there, suspended between sky and sea, letting the salt-tinged wind whip through my hair. From up here, at the boundary between atmosphere and void, the world seemed peaceful, deceptively so. I'd been patrolling for 3 hours, ever since the Justice League's monitoring systems picked up unusual energy signatures along the western seaboard. Batman had asked me to investigate, asked, not ordered, though with Bruce the distinction was often academic. Diana had volunteered to join me, which meant she'd be arriving from Themyscira any moment now. The thought made my chest tighten with something I didn't want to name. Anxiety? Inadequacy? I'd been an active member of the League for 2 years now, had faced down alien invasions and reality-warping sorcerers, had earned my place at that table in the Watchtower. But around Diana, around Wonder Woman, I still felt like I was playing dress-up in a hero's costume. A streak of gold and crimson appeared on the horizon, growing rapidly larger. Even at a distance, Diana's presence was undeniable. Where my flight pattern was efficient, direct, hers was graceful, purposeful, like the universe itself adjusted to accommodate her passage. She slowed as she approached, coming to rest in the air beside me with barely a displacement of wind. "Kara," she said, her voice warm despite the altitude. "Thank you for waiting." "Of course." I gestured toward the darkening ocean below. The energy readings are concentrated about 40 miles southwest. Some kind of temporal distortion, according to the scans, but it's inconsistent. Appears and disappears. Diana's dark eyes narrowed as she scanned the horizon, her warrior's instincts already engaged. Even in stillness, she radiated purpose. The fading sunlight caught the gold of her tiara, her armor, making her look like something from ancient myth brought to life, which, I supposed, she was. "Temporal distortions are rarely accidents," she said. "We should approach with caution." I nodded, hyper-aware of how young I must seem to her. Diana had been a hero when my planet still existed, had fought in wars before I was born. Sometimes I forgot that beneath the seemingly ageless exterior was a woman who'd lived for millennia, who'd seen civilizations rise and fall. We descended together, matching speeds without discussion. The ocean rose to meet us, its surface shifting from smooth to textured as we dropped below the cloud layer. The sun was almost gone now, painting the waves in shades of purple and gold. "You seem troubled," Diana said suddenly. I glanced at her, startled. "I'm fine, just focused on the mission." "Kara." She said my name with gentle firmness, the way one might speak to a beloved younger sister. "We've flown together enough times. I know your tells." Heat crept up my neck, not from my heat vision, but simple embarrassment. Of course she'd noticed. Diana noticed everything. "It's nothing," I said. I want to make sure I handle this right. Whatever it is." "You will." She said it with such simple certainty that I almost believed her. "You always do." The energy signature spiked on my internal readings, the Kryptonian technology in my suit interfacing with my enhanced senses. I held up a hand, signaling Diana to stop. We hovered about 20 feet above the water's surface, scanning the area. There, Diana said, pointing. The ocean's surface was rippling in a circular pattern about 100 yards ahead, the water rising and falling in ways that defied the surrounding wave patterns. As we watched, the air above it began to shimmer, like heat waves rising from summer asphalt. Then the shimmer intensified, became a tear, and through it stepped a woman. She appeared standing on the water's surface as if it were solid ground, which should have been impossible. She wore armor similar to Diana's, but where Diana's was bronze and gold and crimson, this woman's was silver and black, with a breastplate that caught the dying light like polished obsidian. Her hair was dark, pulled back in a severe braid, and her face. My breath caught. She looked like Diana. Not identical, but similar enough that the relationship was undeniable. Same strong jawline, same regal bearing, same dangerous grace. "Diana of Themyscira," the woman said, her voice carrying easily across the water despite the wind. "I've been searching for you." Diana's entire body had gone rigid beside me, her hand moving instinctively to the sword at her hip. "Who are you?" she demanded. "How do you know me?" The woman smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I am Antiope, daughter of Hippolyta, though you would know me better as your sister, and I've come to bring you home to answer for your crimes." The world seemed to tilt. I looked at Diana, expecting confusion or denial, but her face had gone carefully blank, her diplomat's mask, the one she wore when negotiations turned dangerous. "I have no sister," Diana said quietly. "Antiope was my aunt, killed during Ares' invasion. I watched her die." "The Antiope you knew died, yes." The woman, this other Antiope, took a step forward, still impossibly balanced on the water's surface. "But I am not from your timeline, Diana. I am from what should have been. The true timeline, before you fractured it with your interference." My mind raced, trying to process the implications. Alternate timelines, a different version of Diana's family. This was way beyond the usual scope of patrol duty. "Explain yourself," Diana commanded, and there was steel in her voice now, the Amazon warrior emerging. "Quickly." Antiope's expression hardened. 3 years ago, in my timeline, you made a choice. You used Kronos' hourglass to travel back in time, attempting to prevent a war. But you didn't just prevent it, sister. You unmade it, erased it from existence, along with everything that came after. Victories, sacrifices, births, deaths, all gone because you thought you knew better than the fates. "That's not," Diana started, but Antiope cut her off. "In doing so, you created this timeline, this fractured branch where I should never have existed, where I was never born. But the temporal backlash didn't erase me, Diana. It displaced me, trapped me between realities, watching as the universe I knew, everyone I loved, faded into nothing." I could feel my heart pounding, my Kryptonian hearing picking up the elevated rhythm of Diana's pulse beside me. She was scared, I realized. Actually scared. "I would never," Diana's voice was barely above a whisper. "I have never used Kronos' hourglass. I would never risk such temporal manipulation." "Not yet," Antiope said. "But you will. In approximately 17 days, according to my calculations. A crisis will arise, and you'll see no other option. You'll think you can fix everything, save everyone. And in your pride, you'll destroy a timeline more vital than your own." The temporal rift behind Antiope pulsed with sickly green light, growing larger. Through it, I could see shapes moving, figures in armor, hundreds of them. "I didn't come here to debate temporal ethics," Antiope continued, raising one hand. In it materialized a spear, crackling with that same green energy. "I came to prevent the catastrophe, by any means necessary." "Kara, go," Diana said urgently. "What? No. This isn't your fight. Contact the League. Tell them." Antiope moved. One moment she was standing on the water, the next she was airborne. spear thrust forward with impossible speed. I barely had time to register the movement before Diana's sword was out, deflecting the strike with a sound like thunder. The shockwave from their collision hit me like a physical blow, sending me tumbling backward through the air. I stabilized quickly, my Kryptonian physiology adjusting. But by then, they were already engaged in earnest combat. They fought like mirrors of each other, every strike and counterstrike perfectly matched. Antiope's spear flashed in deadly arcs, leaving trails of green energy in the air. Diana's sword sang as it parried, her shield deflecting blows that would have shattered mountains. They moved across the sky and water with impossible grace, their battle transforming the peaceful ocean into a war zone. I needed to help. Diana might be a legendary warrior, but this was different. This was family, and the hesitation I could see in her movements, the fractional delays before each strike, told me she was pulling her punches. I dove into the fray, using my speed to intercept Antiope's next strike. My fist connected with her shield, and the impact sent shockwaves rippling across the water's surface. She barely stumbled, pivoting to face me with eyes that blazed with righteous fury. "The Kryptonian," she said, as if recognizing me from some history I hadn't lived yet. "Of course she would use you, you who understand nothing of the bonds between sisters." The words hit harder than they should have. Before I could respond, Antiope's spear was coming at me, and I had to twist desperately to avoid being impaled. The weapon's edge caught my shoulder instead, and pain exploded through my body. Real pain, the kind I rarely felt anymore. Whatever that spear was made of, it could hurt me. "Kara!" Diana's voice was sharp with alarm. I grabbed the spear shaft before Antiope could pull it back, ignoring the burning sensation where it touched my skin. We grappled in midair, her strength matching mine in ways that shouldn't have been possible for someone without Kryptonian heritage. "You defend her," Antiope hissed, her face inches from mine. "Do you even know what she'll do? The billions who'll die because of her choice." "I know, Diana," I shot back, using my heat vision to force her to release the spear. "And I know she'd never willingly hurt innocents." "Willingness has nothing to do with it." Antiope kicked off my chest, sending us both flying apart. Good intentions pave Hades' deepest roads. Diana was suddenly between us, her lasso in one hand, sword in the other. "Enough. Antiope, if you truly are who you claim to be, then you know the lasso compels truth. Take it. Let us speak without violence." For a moment, I thought Antiope might comply. Her expression softened fractionally, something almost like longing crossing her features. But then the temporal rift pulsed again, and the figures I'd seen earlier began emerging. They were Amazons, or versions of them. Each wore armor similar to Antiope's, that same black and silver corruption of Themyscira's colors. They poured through the rift in ordered ranks, dozens becoming hundreds, all of them armed and moving with deadly purpose. "I would have preferred to handle this as family," Antiope said, raising her spear. The army behind her mirrored the gesture. "But you leave me no choice. Warriors of the true timeline, take Diana of Themyscira alive. Kill anyone who interferes." The attack came like a tidal wave. I'd fought armies before. Darkseid's parademons, White Martian invasion forces, Brainiac's drones. But those were mindless soldiers or programmed machines. These were trained warriors, each one moving with the skill and precision of a Themysciran Amazon. And there were so many of them. I caught the first wave with a blast of freeze breath, creating a wall of ice that bought us precious seconds. Diana was already moving, her lasso whirling in complex patterns that swept 3 attackers from the sky. We fought back to back by instinct, our movements synchronizing despite never having trained together for this specific scenario. "We can't fight them all," I shouted over the chaos, blocking a spear thrust with my forearm and countering with a punch that sent the attacker spiraling into the ocean. "I know," Diana replied, her voice strained. She was holding back, I realized. Even now, even against opponents trying to kill us, she was pulling her strikes. These were Amazons, even if from another timeline. To her, they were still sisters. That hesitation was going to get us killed. An Amazon with a warhammer managed to slip past my guard, bringing her weapon down toward Diana's exposed back. I moved without thinking, taking the blow meant for her. The hammer struck my spine with a sound like a bell tolling, and even my Kryptonian durability had limits. I felt something crack, pain radiating through my entire body. "Kara!" Diana caught me as I fell, her arms impossibly strong and gentle at once. "Stay with me." "I'm okay," I managed, though it was a lie. My healing factor was already working, knitting damaged tissue back together, but it would take time. Time we didn't have. Antiope descended through the chaos of battle, her warriors parting to let her pass. She looked at Diana holding my injured form, and something complicated crossed her face. Regret, maybe, or recognition. "You always did care too much," Antiope said softly. "It's your greatest strength and your fatal flaw." Diana's jaw clenched. "These warriors, they follow you willingly?" "They are all that remains of our timeline, refugees clinging to existence in the spaces between realities." Antiope's spear lowered fractionally. "They fight because they have nothing left to lose, Diana. Because when you use Kronos' hourglass 17 days from now, you'll erase not just their past, but their future. They'll never have existed at all." "Then I won't use it," Diana said simply. "I swear on the river Styx, I will not touch Kronos' hourglass. I will find another way to handle whatever crisis arises." The words hung in the air, heavy with divine weight. An oath sworn on the river Styx was binding, absolute. Breaking it would mean consequences beyond mortal understanding. Antiope shook her head slowly. "You don't understand. It's not a choice you'll make lightly. The crisis that's coming, the Omega event we called it will present you with an impossible decision. Use the hourglass and save billions in your timeline while erasing mine. Or let those billions die to preserve a timeline you don't even know exists." My healing had progressed enough that I could stand, though Diana kept a steadying hand on my shoulder. "There has to be another option," I said. "There's always another option." "Is there?" Antiope's laugh was bitter. "Tell me, Kryptonian, if you could go back, prevent Krypton's destruction, save your entire species, but doing so would erase this timeline and everyone in it, would you hesitate?" The question hit like a punch to the gut. Would I? If I had the power to save Krypton, to see my parents again, to give my people a future, could I resist that temptation, knowing it would unmake everyone I'd come to care about in this life? I didn't have an answer. "I see understanding in your eyes," Antiope said. "Now you begin to grasp the weight Diana will carry, the choice that will break her." Diana's hand on my shoulder tightened. "I am not the woman you describe," she said, her voice steady despite everything. "I have faced impossible choices before. I have lost people I loved to preserve the greater good. Whatever this Omega event is, I will find a way through it that doesn't require temporal manipulation." "You truly believe that?" Antiope's expression was almost pitying. "I did too, once. Before I watched you, my sister, the greatest hero I ever knew, make the choice that destroyed everything." The temporal rift was starting to destabilize, its edges fraying like torn fabric. Antiope glanced back at it, then at her army of displaced warriors. They hovered in formation, weapons ready but not attacking, waiting for their commander's signal. "We're running out of time," she said. "This incursion is costing enormous energy. I can maintain it for perhaps another hour before we're pulled back into the void between timelines." "Then let me help you," Diana said urgently. "Come to Themyscira. Speak with my mother, your mother. Perhaps together we can find a solution that doesn't require violence." "Your mother isn't mine," Antiope replied sharply. "My Hippolyta died defending Themyscira from a dark side invasion that won't happen in your timeline, because in your timeline you prevented it, using Kronos' hourglass. The circular logic was making my head spin. Wait, I said. If Diana prevented Darkseid's invasion in this timeline, doesn't that mean she's already used the hourglass? That the thing you're trying to prevent has already happened? Both Diana and Antiope turned to look at me, and I saw the same realization dawning in their eyes. No, Antiope said slowly. In my timeline, Diana used the hourglass during the Omega event, which is still 17 days away. But if she's already used it to prevent Darkseid's invasion, then there are at least 3 timelines, Diana finished. Mine, yours, and a third where Darkseid succeeded. She pressed a hand to her temple, processing the implications. This is more complex than a simple branching path. A lot more complex, I added. If using the hourglass creates new timelines rather than overwriting existing ones, then preventing Diana from using it won't save your timeline at all. Antiope's face had gone pale. That's not. The Oracle said that stopping her would restore our timeline, that preventing the temporal manipulation would heal the fracture. What Oracle? Diana asked sharply. A seer from our timeline, one of the few who survived long enough to guide us. She said. Antiope's voice broke. She promised us that if we stopped you, everything would be restored. Everyone we lost would come back. The desperation in her words was heartbreaking. I'd felt that same desperate hope when I first came to Earth, thinking maybe somehow I could find other Kryptonian survivors. Maybe somehow my planet's destruction could be undone. It was a pain I knew intimately, the refusal to accept that the dead were truly gone. I'm sorry, Diana said softly, and the genuine grief in her voice made something in my chest ache. But oracles can be wrong. Or worse, they can tell us what we want to hear rather than what we need to know. One of the Amazon warriors broke formation, descending to hover beside Antiope. She was younger than the others, her armor bearing fewer battle scars. Commander, she said urgently, the rift is collapsing faster than calculated. We need to return now or risk being stranded. Antiope's hand clenched around her spear. I can't go back with nothing. I can't tell them I failed. You haven't failed, I found myself saying. Both Amazons looked at me in surprise. You've given Diana information she didn't have before. You've warned her about the Omega event. Maybe that knowledge alone will be enough to change whatever decision she would have made. The Kryptonian speaks wisdom, the younger warrior said. Commander, please, our sisters need you. The internal struggle was visible on Antiope's face. Finally, with visible effort, she lowered her spear. Fall back, she commanded. All units, return to staging. The army began withdrawing in ordered ranks, flowing back through the destabilizing rift like water down a drain. Antiope remained, her eyes fixed on Diana. If you truly won't use the hourglass, she said, then everyone who dies in the Omega event, their blood will be on your hands. Can you live with that? Diana met her gaze steadily. I have lived with worse. As have you, I suspect. Something passed between them then, some understanding that existed beyond words or timelines. Antiope nodded once, sharply. Perhaps we'll meet again, she said, in better circumstances. Perhaps, Diana agreed, though I hope not. I hope you find a way to save your people without resorting to violence across timelines. Antiope smiled, and for the first time it reached her eyes. Now you sound like the Diana I knew. Then she turned and dove through the closing rift, disappearing in a flash of green light. The temporal distortion collapsed with a sound like breaking glass, and suddenly we were alone above a calm ocean under a star-filled sky. The entire battle had taken less than 15 minutes, though it felt like hours. Diana's shoulders sagged, exhaustion finally showing through her warrior's composure. I moved to support her, and she didn't resist. Are you all right? I asked. I don't know, she admitted. Kara, what if she's right? What if there is no way to handle the Omega event without impossible choices? Then we'll find a third option, I said firmly. We always do. That's what heroes do. We don't accept impossible situations, we change them. She looked at me, really looked at me, and some of the weight seemed to lift from her expression. When did you become so wise? I've been paying attention, I said, learning from the best. Diana pulled me into a sudden, fierce embrace. Her strength was carefully controlled, but I could feel the trembling in her arms, the fear and uncertainty she'd been holding back during the fight. Thank you, she whispered against my hair, for staying, for fighting beside me, for not running when any sensible person would have. I hugged her back, ignoring the lingering pain in my spine. That's what partners do. We don't abandon each other, no matter how impossible things get. When we finally separated, Diana's eyes were bright with unshed tears, but she was smiling. We should return to the watchtower. Batman will want a full report, and we need to research this Omega event. If it's truly only 17 days away, we'll figure it out, I interrupted. Together, the whole League. She nodded, taking a deep breath and visibly drawing herself back together. The vulnerable woman was carefully tucked away, replaced by the confident hero the world knew as Wonder Woman. But I'd seen behind the mask now. I'd seen her fear and her strength, her capacity for love and her willingness to sacrifice. And somehow, that made her more admirable, not less. 3 days later, Diana and I stood once again above the Pacific Ocean, hovering in the space where we'd first encountered Antiope. The temporal rifts were still detectable if you knew how to look for them, faint scars in reality where timelines brushed against each other. Do you think she knows? I asked. Antiope? Do you think she's aware that you didn't use the hourglass after all? Perhaps, Diana said. Or perhaps in her timeline, I did use it. Perhaps there are infinite versions of this crisis, each resolving differently. She smiled slightly. Temporal mechanics still give me a headache. Join the club. We floated in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the water. Somewhere out there, Antiope and her warriors were still trapped between timelines, still fighting their impossible war against erasure. I hoped they'd found peace. I hoped they'd found a way home. Kara, Diana said suddenly, thank you for everything you did during the crisis, but especially for not letting me choose the easy path. The hourglass wouldn't have been easy, I said. Just fast. Which is sometimes the same thing when you're desperate. She turned to look at me, and her expression was soft, open in a way I rarely saw. I've fought alongside many heroes over the centuries, but few have challenged me the way you do. Few have had the courage to tell me when I'm wrong. You weren't wrong, I said. You were scared. There's a difference. Is there? Sometimes I think fear is just another word for doubt. Then doubt is what keeps us human, I replied. Or Kryptonian, or Amazon. The point is, if we weren't a little scared of the power we have, we'd be dangerous instead of heroic. Diana laughed, the sound genuine and warm. When did you become so wise? I've been learning from the best. She pulled me into another embrace, less desperate than the one on the day we'd saved the world, but no less meaningful. I'm honored to call you my friend, she said quietly. My sister in arms. The feeling's mutual, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Though I have to say, if you're going to keep having family members show up from alternate timelines, you could warn me in advance. I'll add it to my list of impossible tasks, she said dryly. We flew back to the watchtower together, side by side, equals in a way that felt earned rather than assumed. The Justice League was waiting with what Batman called a debriefing, but what was clearly a celebration. Even he seemed almost relaxed, a faint smile visible beneath the cowl. Clark pulled me aside as the party got underway. You did good work, he said. I'm proud of you. I didn't save the world alone, I replied. It was a team effort. But you helped Diana make the right choice. That matters. He glanced across the room to where Diana was speaking with Wonder Girl and the other Amazonian heroes. She carries a lot of weight. It's good that she has someone willing to share the burden. I followed his gaze, watching Diana laugh at something Wonder Girl said. She looked lighter somehow, as if facing down the Omega event had lifted some invisible weight from her shoulders. She'd do the same for me, I said. I know. That's what makes you good partners. Partners. The word settled in my chest with surprising warmth. I'd always thought of Diana as a mentor, a legendary hero I was lucky to learn from. But she'd never treated me that way, never condescended or diminished my contributions. She'd seen me as an equal from the start, even when I hadn't seen myself that way. Maybe that was the real lesson from the past 2 weeks. Not about temporal mechanics or quantum physics or impossible choices, but about trust, about being willing to rely on others, to accept help, to face the darkness together instead of alone. Diana caught my eye across the room and raised her glass in a subtle toast. I raised mine in return, understanding passing between us without words. We'd faced an impossible situation and found a way through it, not because we were the strongest or the smartest, but because we'd refused to give up on each other, because we'd chosen hope over despair, teamwork over martyrdom, faith over fear. And if another crisis came, when another crisis came, we'd face it the same way, together. The party continued late into the night, heroes from across the world gathering to celebrate their victory. But I found myself gravitating back to Diana's side, drawn by the easy companionship we'd built through crisis and triumph. "What now?" I asked her as we stood on the watchtower's observation deck, watching Earth rotate peacefully below. "Now we rebuild the quantum generators into permanent planetary defense systems," she said. "Now we share our findings with the Coluans and help them secure other worlds threatened by dimensional instability. Now we prepare for whatever crisis comes next." "That's a lot of now," I observed. "Yes, but we don't have to face any of it today." She smiled at me, genuine and warm. "Today, we rest, we celebrate, we remember that we're not just warriors, we're also people deserving of joy." "To joy," I said, raising my glass. "To joy," Diana agreed. "And to friendship, and to the courage to find impossible solutions to impossible problems." We clinked glasses and drank, and for that moment, everything was perfect. The Omega event was behind us, the world was safe, and I stood beside a hero I'd come to think of as more than just a teammate, as a true friend, a sister in every way that mattered. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever impossible choices the universe might throw at us, I knew we'd face them together. And that made all the difference. The next 10 days were a blur of desperate research and preparation. The Coluans sent everything they had on the quantum fissure, and our best scientific minds, Cyborg, Mr. Terrific, Ray Palmer, pored over the data looking for weaknesses or alternatives. The fissure continued to grow, now visible from Earth as a dark patch in the night sky that seemed to consume starlight. People were starting to notice, and the conspiracy theories were flying. Batman had mobilized the League's public relations division, trying to manage the panic without lying about the threat. I spent most of my time with Diana, training for scenarios we hoped would never occur. If the destabilizer plan went forward, either Clark or I would need to deploy it. We practiced navigating quantum fluctuations in the Watchtower's simulation chambers, pushing our powers to the limit and beyond. "Your heat vision won't work the same in a quantum field," Cyborg explained during one session. "The laws of physics become probabilistic rather than deterministic. You might fire a beam and have it scatter across 17 different dimensions." "Comforting," I muttered, trying to recalibrate my aim as the simulation threw impossible geometries at me. Diana watched from the observation deck, her expression unreadable. She'd been distant since the conference, spending long hours in meditation or communication with Themyscira. I knew she was preparing herself for the possibility of using the hourglass, despite our agreement to find alternatives. On the 11th day, Dr. Fate delivered his research. "I've examined every temporal manipulation spell in existence," he said. his golden helmet gleaming in the watchtower's light. None of them can undo an event of this magnitude without creating paradoxes that would be as destructive as the fissure itself. The hourglass of Kronos is unique in its power and uniquely dangerous. Define dangerous, Batman said. The user becomes a fixed point in time, immune to paradox but also unable to exist in any single timeline. They become scattered across all possible realities, experiencing every version of events simultaneously. Fate's voice was grim. Even for an Amazon with Diana's resilience, the psychological strain would be catastrophic. You're saying it would drive her mad, I said flatly. I'm saying it would unmake her as a coherent individual. She would exist, but not in any meaningful sense. Diana, sitting across the conference table, absorbed this information without visible reaction. And the chances that using the hourglass would actually prevent the fissure? Unknown. The hourglass shows you what could be, not what will be. You might create a timeline where the fissure never forms, or you might create one where it forms differently, or worse. So it's not even a guaranteed solution, Superman said. Just another gamble with terrible odds. The weight in the room was suffocating. We were running out of time and options, and everyone knew it. It was Flash who broke the silence. What if we're thinking about this wrong? He said suddenly. We keep trying to stop the fissure or close it, but what if instead we just move Earth? Everyone turned to stare at him. Hear me out, he continued, speaking faster as the idea took shape. The fissure is spreading, but it's spreading along a specific vector, along the galactic plane, following gravity wells. If we could move Earth out of its path, change our orbit, or even our dimensional frequency, that's insane, Aquaman said. So is fighting a hole in reality, Flash shot back. But insane doesn't mean impossible. We've got Kryptonians, lanterns, Martian technology, Themysciran magic. If we pool our resources, could we phase shift the entire planet to a slightly different frequency, make us intangible to the fissure? Cyborg's eye was already glowing, running calculations. It would require perfect synchronization from multiple power sources, and the strain on Earth's magnetic field would be enormous. We'd need to shield the planet from the effects, protect all life from the dimensional shift. But it's theoretically possible? Batman pressed. Theoretically, Cyborg admitted, with about a 15% chance of success and an 85% chance of accidentally phasing Earth into another dimension permanently. That's better than 30% on the destabilizer, I pointed out. And it doesn't require anyone to sacrifice themselves, Diana added, something like hope entering her voice for the first time in days. The room erupted into discussion, scientists and heroes throwing out ideas and calculations. Ray Palmer suggested using his size-changing technology to create quantum tunnels that could redirect the fissure's energy. Hal proposed using the combined power of multiple Green Lanterns to create a barrier. John mentioned Martian phase-shifting technology that could be adapted. For the first time since this crisis began, we weren't talking about impossible choices and certain sacrifice. We were doing what the Justice League did best, finding solutions no one else could imagine. The final plan was insane, cobbled together from a dozen different technologies and a healthy dose of desperation. We would create a global network of quantum phase generators, devices that Ray Palmer and Cyborg designed based on atom technology and Martian principles. These generators would create a field that shifted Earth's dimensional frequency by exactly 0.0001%, just enough to make us intangible to the quantum fissure. The catch: the generators required enormous power to function simultaneously, and they had to be activated in perfect sync. One generator failing or being out of alignment would collapse the field and potentially tear the planet apart. We had 72 hours to build, deploy, and activate 50 generators across the globe. Every member of the Justice League mobilized. Superman and I handled the heavy construction, flying components to remote locations at supersonic speeds. The Green Lantern Corps created power conduits linking the generators. Flash ran communications, synchronizing teams across continents. Cyborg and Mr. Terrific coordinated from the watchtower, monitoring every detail. Diana led the team handling the magical components, the Themysciran enchantments woven into each generator to protect against dimensional bleed-through. I watched her work, saw the fierce determination in her eyes, and felt a surge of pride. This was who she was. Not the warrior who chose temporal manipulation, but the hero who found another way. On the final day, with 6 hours until the Fisher reached Earth's orbit, we completed the last generator. It sat on a small island in the Pacific, humming with barely contained power. "All stations report ready," Cyborg's voice came through every communicator. "Synchronization in T-5 minutes." I found Diana on a rooftop in Metropolis, overlooking the city as the sun set. The Fisher was visible now, even in daylight, a dark scar across the sky that made people stop and stare in fear. "Nervous?" I asked, landing beside her. "Terrified," she admitted. "Kara, if this doesn't work, it'll work. You can't know that. I know we gave it everything we had. I know the best minds and the strongest powers in the universe came together to make this possible." I looked at the city below, at millions of people living their lives, unaware of how close they'd come to not existing. "And I know that you didn't give in to easy solutions, even when every instinct probably screamed at you to use the hourglass." Diana smiled slightly. "Every instinct except one." "Which one?" "The one that said I should trust my team. Trust you." She turned to face me fully. When Antiope told me I would face an impossible choice, she was right. But the choice wasn't between the hourglass and the destabilizer. It was between acting alone and having faith in others. "T-2 minutes, Cyborg announced. Around the world, 50 generators began to hum in harmony, their frequencies aligning. I could feel the vibration in my bones, in my teeth, in the base of my skull. The air itself seemed to shimmer. "All teams, final check." Batman's voice was calm, controlled. "Lantern Core?" "Power levels optimal," Hal reported. "Martian phase shift?" "Stable and ready," John confirmed. "Kryptonian power grid?" "At full capacity," Superman said. "Kara?" "Ready," I confirmed, my hand on the generator we'd placed in Metropolis. One by one, teams reported in. Atlantean depth charges protecting the ocean-based generators. The Themysciran enchantments holding strong. Flash standing ready to manually adjust any generator that fell out of sync. T-30 seconds. Diana reached out and took my hand. Her grip was strong, steady, anchoring me to this moment. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for not letting me walk this path alone." "Always," I replied. T-10 seconds. 9, 8. The Fisher was close now, its leading edge entering Earth's atmosphere. I could see reality fragmenting at its approach, the sky rippling like water. 7, 6, 5. "Together," Diana said. "Together," I agreed. 4, 3, 2, 1. "Activate." 50 generators fired simultaneously, and the world lurched. I felt reality shift around me, felt Earth slide sideways through dimensions I couldn't name. For an instant that lasted forever, I could see multiple versions of everything, Metropolis as it was, as it had been, as it could be. I saw Diana young and old, alive and fallen, triumphant and broken. Then the moment passed, and reality snapped back into focus. The Fisher was still there, still spreading, but it was passing around us, flowing over and under and through the space Earth occupied without touching us. We'd become ghosts to it, intangible and safe. Cheers erupted across the communication network. I heard Flash whooping, heard Hal laughing with relief, heard the controlled joy in Batman's voice as he confirmed the success. Diana pulled me into a fierce embrace, and I hugged her back just as tightly. We'd done it, not through sacrifice or impossible choices, but through teamwork and trust, and refusing to accept that some problems had no good solutions. The generators will need to remain active for approximately 6 hours, Cyborg reported, until the fissure passes completely through our orbital path. Then we can begin the phase shift back to normal frequency. Understood, Batman said. All teams maintain current positions. No one moves until we're certain. The next 6 hours were tense but hopeful. We watched the fissure pass, a cosmic threat rendered harmless by human and alien ingenuity. When Cyborg finally gave the all-clear and we began the phase shift back to normal reality, the relief was almost physical. Earth settled back into its proper dimensional frequency with barely a tremor. The fissure continued on its path through the Vega system, where the Coluans had finally managed to collapse the quantum singularity using a method inspired by our solution. Crisis averted, reality saved. We ended up at a small cafe in Coast City, Diana having changed into civilian clothes that somehow made her look both more and less remarkable. Without her armor and weapons, she could almost pass for a normal woman, except for the way people's gazes lingered, drawn by some indefinable quality of presence. "Does it bother you?" I asked as we waited for our coffee. "The way people stare?" "I stopped noticing decades ago," she replied. "Though I suspect they stare at you as much as me. Your disguise isn't as effective as you think it is." I glanced down at my glasses, Clark's suggestion for a civilian identity, though I'd never fully committed to the dual identity charade the way he had. They're just glasses. On a woman who could be a fashion model, wearing clothes that do nothing to hide her physique, with posture that screams military training. Diana's smile was teasing. "Kara, you're about as subtle as I am." "Great, so we're both terrible at blending in." I prefer to think of it as refusing to diminish ourselves to make others comfortable. Our coffee arrived, some elaborate caramel thing for me, black Turkish coffee for Diana. We sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the city move around us. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that in less than 2 weeks, something called the Omega event might threaten everything they'd ever known. "Do you ever wish you could just be normal?" I asked suddenly. Not have powers, not have responsibilities, just be a person living a simple life? Diana considered the question seriously. "Sometimes," she admitted, "when I'm tired or when I've failed to save someone I should have. But then I remember that I've been given these gifts for a purpose. To waste them on selfish normalcy would be a greater tragedy than any burden they impose." "That's very noble of you. It's practical," she corrected. "I am what I am, Kara. Amazon warrior, daughter of Hippolyta, champion of Themyscira. Wishing to be something else would be as futile as wishing water to not be wet." She paused, studying me over the rim of her coffee cup. "But you had a normal life once, on Krypton. Do you mourn it?" The question struck deeper than I'd expected. "Every day," I said softly. "I remember Argo City, my parents, my friends. I remember planning my future, what I'd study, who I'd become. And then it was all gone, and I had to build a new life from nothing. Yet you did build it, a remarkable one. I had help. Clark, the Kents, Batman's training, the League. I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup, drawing comfort from its warmth. But sometimes I wonder who I would have been if Krypton had survived. If I'd grown up there, lived a normal Kryptonian life, would I be happier? Would I be better?" "You'd be different," Diana said. "Not better or worse, simply different. The woman you've become is shaped by your losses as much as your gifts. To wish away the tragedy would be to wish away yourself." That's depressingly philosophical. "Welcome to immortal wisdom," she said dryly. "It's rarely cheerful." I laughed despite myself. "How do you do it? Carry all that weight and still find moments to laugh?" "The same way you do, by remembering that we're not just warriors or heroes. We're also women, with the right to joy and friendship and simple pleasures like overpriced coffee." She raised her cup in a mock toast. "To finding balance between saving the world and living in it." I clinked my cup against hers. To balance. We spent another hour at the cafe, talking about everything and nothing. Diana told stories of Themyscira, of training with her Aunt Antiope, the original one who'd died heroically. I shared memories of Krypton, carefully edited to avoid the grief that always accompanied them. It was normal, peaceful, ordinary, exactly what we both needed. The alert came as we were leaving, both our communicators chiming in unison. Batman's voice was tight with urgency. All available League members to the Watchtower immediately. We've identified the Omega event. The conference room was packed when we arrived. Every member of the Justice League present either physically or via hologram. The main display showed a star chart that made no sense to me until Cyborg zoomed in on a particular section. "That's the Vega system," Hal said, his hologram leaning forward. "What about it?" "Approximately 96 hours ago, a Coluan science vessel entered the system," Cyborg explained. "Standard research mission, nothing unusual, but their scans detected an anomaly near Vega Prime, a quantum fissure that's been growing exponentially." The display shifted, showing a tear in space itself, crackling with energy that hurt to look at even in holographic form. "That's a dimensional breach," Dr. Fate's voice echoed from the corner where his hologram floated. "A crack in the fundamental structure of reality, and it's spreading." "How fast?" Superman asked. "At current rates, it will reach Earth in 14 days, Cyborg said grimly. "And when it does, it won't just destroy our planet. It will unravel the entire timeline, erasing everything that's ever existed in this reality." The room went silent. This was it. The Omega event. Not an invasion, not a villain, but a fundamental cosmic catastrophe that threatened existence itself. "Can it be stopped?" Diana's voice was steady, but I could hear the underlying tension. "The Coluans believe so," Batman said, pulling up another display. "The fissure is anchored by a quantum singularity, essentially a point of impossible density where multiple realities are trying to occupy the same space. If we can collapse the singularity before it fully forms, the fissure should seal itself." "And if we can't?" Flash asked. "Total ontological collapse. Everything that exists in this timeline simply stops existing. No explosion, no dramatic end, just cessation." I felt my stomach drop. This was worse than any battle, any invasion. You could fight enemies, could find weaknesses and exploit them. How did you fight the fundamental breakdown of reality? "The Coluans have a weapon that might work," Cyborg continued. "A quantum destabilizer that could theoretically collapse the singularity. But it requires a massive energy source to function, and it has to be deployed at the exact center of the fissure." "How massive?" Green Lantern asked. "About equivalent to Earth's sun," Cyborg said. "And the person deploying it would need to survive the quantum fluctuations long enough to trigger the device. We're talking about reality fragmenting around them, time flowing in multiple directions simultaneously, gravity and physics becoming meaningless." "So basically a suicide mission," Flash summarized. "Unless the person deploying it is functionally invulnerable and can survive in any environment," Superman said slowly. He turned to look at me. A Kryptonian. All eyes shifted to me. I felt the weight of their attention, the unspoken calculation running through everyone's minds. Clark could do it. I could do it. We were probably the only ones who could. "There's a complication," Batman said. "The quantum destabilizer is still experimental. The Coluans have run simulations, but they've never tested it in actual conditions. There's an approximately 30% chance it will work as intended. A 40% chance it will collapse the singularity but also destroy everything within a light-year radius, including whoever deploys it. And a 30% chance it will make the fissure worse." "Those are terrible odds," Aquaman said. "They're the only odds we have," Batman replied, "unless someone has a better suggestion." The room fell silent. I could see everyone running through scenarios, searching for alternatives. But there weren't any. This was it, the impossible choice Antiope had warned about. "There is one other option," Diana said quietly. Everyone turned to her. She stood at the head of the table, her expression controlled, but her eyes haunted. "The hourglass of Chronos," she continued. "If we can identify the moment when the quantum singularity first began forming, I could use the hourglass to travel back and prevent it, stop the fissure from ever opening." "Diana, no," I said immediately. "You swore an oath I will gladly break if it means saving everyone," she said firmly. "Kara, this is exactly the scenario Antiope described. A choice between using the hourglass and watching billions die. I understand now why my alternate self made that choice." "But it won't save your timeline," I argued desperately. "It'll just create a new one, and the odds of you surviving the temporal manipulation are—" "Irrelevant," she interrupted. "If there's a chance to prevent the Omega event, I have to take it." "We could try the destabilizer first," Clark said. "If it fails, you use the hourglass as a backup." Diana shook her head. "If the destabilizer fails catastrophically, we won't have time for backup plans. The timeline will already be collapsing." Batman's eyes narrowed. "You've already decided, haven't you? This isn't a proposal. It's an announcement." "I am the most qualified to use the hourglass," Diana said. "Themysciran magic is woven into my being. I have the best chance of surviving the temporal backlash." "No." The word came out harder than I intended, drawing surprised looks from around the table. "Diana, you don't get to make this decision alone. You said it yourself. We face impossible odds together. That's what makes us a team." "Kara is right," Superman said. "We have 14 days. We use that time to find a better solution, one that doesn't require temporal manipulation or suicide missions." "And if we fail?" Diana challenged. "Then we fail together," John said, his quiet voice carrying across the room. "But we do not sacrifice our principles before we've exhausted every alternative." Diana's jaw clenched, frustration and fear warring in her expression. "Every moment we debate is a moment closer to catastrophe." "Then we stop debating and start working," Batman said. "Cyborg, coordinate with the Coloans. Get us every piece of data they have on the fissure and the destabilizer. Fate, you and Zatanna research temporal alternatives that don't involve paradox-generating artifacts. Hal, talk to the Guardians. Maybe Oan technology has something we can use." Orders flowed again, everyone receiving assignments. But I kept my focus on Diana, watching her struggle with the knowledge that she could end this threat immediately, but at a cost none of us could fully calculate. When the meeting dispersed, I caught her arm before she could leave. "We'll find another way," I said. "You can't promise that." "No, but I can promise that you won't face this alone." I met her eyes steadily. "Whatever happens in 14 days, we face it together. No martyrs, no lone heroes, just the team." She was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Together?" She agreed. "But Kara, if the moment comes when there truly is no other option—" "Then we'll make that choice when we get there," I interrupted. "Not before." The flight back to the watchtower was quiet, both of us lost in our own thoughts. The space station hung in geosynchronous orbit above Earth, a testament to human and alien ingenuity. As we approached the airlock, my communicator crackled to life. "Supergirl, Wonder Woman, report." Batman's voice was crisp, professional, hiding whatever concern he might feel. "Temporal incursion," Diana replied. "Resolved without casualties, but we need to convene the full League. Priority Alpha." There was a pause. "Understood. Conference room in 15 minutes." The airlock cycled, artificial gravity taking hold as we entered the station. John Johns was waiting in the corridor, his Martian features creased with concern. "We felt the temporal disturbance from here," he said. "Are you both unharmed?" "Physically, yes," I said. "Emotionally, that's more complicated." John's eyes softened with understanding. As a telepath, he could probably sense the turmoil roiling beneath our calm exteriors. "The others are assembling. Flash is pulling a double shift in Central City, but he'll be here momentarily. The conference room was already half full when we arrived. Superman, Clark, looked up as we entered, and his expression immediately shifted to concern. He was at my side in an instant, X-ray vision discreetly scanning for injuries. "I'm fine," I assured him. "Healed already." "Your spine had a hairline fracture 15 minutes ago," he said quietly. "Don't tell me you're fine." Sometimes having a cousin with super hearing was more annoying than helpful. "It's healed now. That's the important part." Batman entered, followed by Cyborg and Aquaman. Flash arrived in a gust of wind, still wearing traces of frost from whatever he'd been dealing with in Central City. Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, was already present via hologram from Sector 2814. "Someone want to explain why I'm missing poker night for this?" Hal asked, though his tone made it clear he understood the seriousness. Diana stood at the head of the table, every inch the Amazon princess and diplomat. "We encountered a temporal incursion tonight, a woman claiming to be from an alternate timeline, specifically a version of my Aunt Antiope, whom I watched die years ago, but who claimed to be my sister in her timeline." That got everyone's attention. Even Batman's expression shifted fractionally toward surprise. Diana outlined the encounter methodically, leaving out nothing. The army of displaced Amazons, Antiope's claims about the hourglass, the Omega event, 17 days away. "And you believe her?" Batman asked when she finished. "I believe she believes it," Diana replied carefully. "Whether her timeline is objectively real or a kind of temporal echo, that's beyond my expertise. It's real." Cyborg's mechanical eye was glowing, processing data at superhuman speeds. "I've been running scans since you mentioned the energy signature. The temporal readings are consistent with a genuine alternate timeline, not a simulation or deception. Whatever she experienced actually happened, just not in our version of reality." "Great," Flash muttered, because regular reality wasn't complicated enough. "The hourglass of Kronos," Batman said, his fingers steepled in thought. "I wasn't aware such an artifact existed outside of myth." "It exists," Diana confirmed. "Secured in Themyscira's deepest vaults. I've seen it exactly once, when my mother showed me the most dangerous artifacts in our possession. It's supposed to be able to manipulate time on a cosmic scale, but the cost..." She shook her head. "No Amazon has dared use it in over 2,000 years. And yet, according to Antiope, you will use it in 17 days, Batman said. "Which means we need to identify what this Omega event is and find an alternative solution." "Assuming we want to find an alternative," Hal's hologram interjected. "Devil's advocate here. If this event is bad enough that Wonder Woman thinks time travel is the only option, maybe we should consider the possibility that she'll be right." "No." Diana's voice was absolute. "I swore an oath on the river Styx. I will not use the hourglass, regardless of circumstances." Clark leaned forward. "Diana, we all respect your commitment to your oaths, but if the choice is between breaking an oath and watching billions die, then I will find a third option," she said firmly. "Because that's what we do. That's what makes us heroes instead of gods making choices for mortals." The room fell silent. I could see the conflict on everyone's faces. The understanding that Diana was right, balanced against the pragmatic knowledge that sometimes there were no good options. "John," Batman said finally, "can you reach out to our contacts in the magical community? If there's an apocalyptic event on the horizon, someone must have sensed it." "I'll contact Dr. Fate, Zatanna, and Constantine immediately," John confirmed. "Cyborg, work with our scientists. Model potential scenarios that could constitute an Omega-level threat. Flash, double-check the timeline. Make sure nothing unexpected is scheduled to arrive from the future or past." Orders flowed smoothly from Batman, each League member receiving assignments. This was what we did. We faced impossible odds and found ways to overcome them. Why should temporal paradoxes be any different? "Kara," Batman's attention turned to me, and I straightened instinctively. You fought beside Diana tonight against a superior force. Your perspective on Antiope's tactics and capabilities could be valuable. Write up a detailed report. Yes, sir. The meeting dispersed, heroes heading off to their assigned tasks. Clark caught my arm as I turned to leave. Are you sure you're okay? He asked, his voice low enough that only Kryptonian hearing could pick it up. Honestly, I don't know. I glanced at Diana, who was speaking quietly with John across the room. Clark, what would you do if you could go back and save Krypton, but it meant erasing everything here? Your life, your friends, everyone you've saved on Earth. Would you do it? He was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, he admitted finally. And I'm glad I'll never have to find out. Some choices are too big for any one person to make. But what if you had to? What if the universe forced you to choose? Then I'd do what Diana's doing. I'd look for the option no one else can see, the solution that seems impossible until someone makes it real. He squeezed my shoulder gently. That's what makes her a hero, Kara. Not her strength or her combat skills, her refusal to accept that some problems have no good answers. I nodded, letting his words settle. Clark had a way of cutting through complexity to find the heart of things, a gift I was still learning to emulate. 3 days passed in a blur of research and preparation. The magical community had indeed sensed something, a gathering darkness, an approaching convergence, terms that were disturbingly vague but universally ominous. Dr. Fate had been particularly cryptic, speaking in riddles about choices made in crystal moments and futures written in paradox. I'd spent most of my time in the Watchtower's archives, poring over historical records of previous Omega-level threats. The definition was uncomfortably broad. Any event that threatened the extinction of humanity or the destruction of Earth qualified. We'd faced several already. Darkseid's invasions, the Anti-Monitor's assault, various reality-warping entities. But something about this felt different. It was the 4th night when Diana found me in the archives, surrounded by holographic displays showing battle footage from past crises. You should rest, she said gently. You've barely slept since the encounter. Neither have you, I pointed out. I can hear your heartbeat from here. It's been elevated for 72 hours straight. She smiled slightly. Amazonian constitution. We can function on less sleep than most. So can Kryptonians, but that doesn't mean we should. I closed the displays with a gesture, giving her my full attention. Have you found anything useful? Perhaps. She settled into the chair beside me, and I was struck again by how rare it was to see her simply sit, not perch alert and ready to spring into action, but actually relax. I spoke with my mother about the hourglass. She confirmed what I suspected. It doesn't just manipulate time, it fractures reality. Each use creates a new timeline branching from the point of intervention. Which means Antiope's oracle was wrong, I said. Stopping you from using it won't restore her timeline. Correct, but it also means that if I do use it, if the situation becomes truly desperate, I won't be erasing her timeline. I'll simply be creating a new one. Diana's expression was troubled, which raises ethical questions that make my head ache. If you create a new timeline to save people in this one, are you responsible for everyone who dies in the timeline you don't save? I mused. It's like a cosmic trolley problem. Except the tracks extend infinitely in all directions, and you can't see who's tied to any of them. Diana rubbed her temples. Philosophy was never my strongest subject at Themyscira. You're doing better than me. I'm still stuck on basic logic. I pulled up a new display, showing a web of interconnected timelines that Cyborg had modeled. According to this, there could be thousands of alternate timelines, each one as real as ours. If we save our Earth but doom 100 others by pulling resources or attention or, I don't know, cosmic energy, are we heroes or villains? We're people trying our best with imperfect information, Diana said quietly, which is all anyone can ever be. The philosophical weight of it all was crushing. I thought being Supergirl meant saving people, stopping bad guys, being there when someone needed help. I'd never considered that heroism might involve choosing which realities got to exist. Antiope said you'd face an impossible choice, I said. She was right, wasn't she? Not about the hourglass specifically, but about the weight of command, of being powerful enough to make decisions that affect millions. Yes. Diana's eyes were distant, seeing things I couldn't. Every battle, every crisis, I know that my choices will determine who lives and who dies. It's the burden of leadership, the cost of power, and most days, I can bear it. She looked at me then, and her expression was raw. But this, choosing between entire timelines, playing God with cosmic forces, I'm not sure I'm strong enough for that. I'd never heard her admit vulnerability so openly. Diana was always the strong one, the wise one, the legendary warrior who never faltered. Seeing her doubt, her fear, it should have been frightening. Instead, it felt like a gift, like she was trusting me with a part of herself she showed to few others. You won't have to bear it alone, I said. Whatever happens in 13 days, the whole league will face it together. And maybe, probably, we'll find a solution that doesn't require you to make that choice at all. Your optimism is refreshing, Diana said with a small smile, even if it's not entirely convincing. Fake it till you make it, I replied. Clark taught me that. He says the symbol on our chests doesn't just mean hope. It means we have to be hopeful, even when everything seems hopeless, especially then. Diana studied the symbol on her own armor, the eagle, wings spread in defiant flight. My mother gave me this armor when I left Themyscira. She said it was a reminder that while Amazons are warriors, we're also protectors. The eagle doesn't hunt for sport. It guards its territory and its young. Our strength exists in service to others. And sometimes serving others means making hard choices, I said. Yes, but it never means making them carelessly. She stood, her moment of vulnerability passing. Come, we've been sequestered in the watchtower too long. A few hours on Earth will clear our heads.